Welcome back, young and old, to another edition of the Altered TCG Tournament Recap for week ending the 3rd of August 2025. I want to just give a little bit of a preamble in terms of what will happen. Unfortunately, from the date of recording, which is the 7th of August, a lot of last week's results are not actually in the system, so for next week, I'll add the double up where possible. We also heard that the Blitz tournament, as hosted by Pandy Andy, and I would also be a guest on it fairly frequently, is no longer going to happen. So big loss for the community. We're hoping that can come up and running again at some future point. Someone can actually take it on, or Pandy's able to join us. I'm hoping the latter because I love the work that he does. And, hats off to you for what you've done so far, and hoping you continue to be a stalwart in our community in one way or another, whether it's through casting or just playing. We'll look forward to seeing you, mate. All right, well, let's begin in terms of what happened this week. So AWOL did have a tournament on Monday. They did not on Wednesday. That's because most people were out and about in Indiana for whatever the name of that tournament or that broadcast is, the big board game show. So Season 3, Week 8, 124 players, so an increase of 4 on last week. And there were two teams, or two people, two pilots that went undefeated, both in a finals. We had Pedrino Ducart and DSL Walitze. Now, interesting to note is the finals builds we're going to look at in just a moment. We're going to see how much of that is actually still viable come next week. So when we recap this in 2 weeks' time, following the completion of US qualifiers in Dallas. I wouldn't really call it it's an errata, but it's not a complete nerf as what we saw with Waru happen with the finals. I actually think this is a really good balance, but of course anyone that plays a finals is feeling the pain, especially as it comes halfway through a tournament cycle. That's the hardest part, is some people can qualify with one type of deck, others do not. Some people had a lot of chance to test their decks, and the finals players that are playing post Dallas are not going to get a chance to do that. So that's the unfortunate part of what was done, but I believe that Equinox did this because it was needed, and needed immediately, or as close to immediately as possible. So let's have a look at Pedrino Ducart's deck, and then we'll move on to DSL Walitze. So Pedrino Ducart, what you're looking at here, 13 out of their 39 cards are spells. So basically very clear, 1/3, 2/3 characters, 1/3 characters, 2/3 spells, Sleight of Hand, Rhyme Frost, Beauty Sleep, Magical Train. Only one Rhyme Frost, that's interesting. One Evanescence as well. Off you go. Moth to a Plane, Conjuring Seal. One thing you don't see here is the use of the Nylum. So they really are focused more on the spells and the characters that anchor. And of course, you cannot go by with not having your Katagarin Mage Dancer for the potential for draw. The Tooth Fairies for some level of interaction from hand to reduce your opponent's reserve. And Pasiphae, which I'm seeing a lot more of, especially when you're playing against a lot of token characters, especially the Sigismar builds, which are 1/1/1s. In terms of their uniques, Pedrino Ducart. I don't know if that's even close. Probably sounds Italian to me. We'll figure it out. Okay, the first one is a 1/1 for 0/0/0. Not often that you see that for a 1/1/1, for a 1/1 in cost. I gain Anchored, and at dusk, if I have one or more boosts, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. Really good, only needing the single boost, and you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand if you decide to play its quick ability. The second one, also a very cheap card, a very good after you in this case as well, is 1/1 for 0/1/0, and when it's played from reserve, I gain Anchored. Otherwise, when I leave the Expedition Zone, if I have one or more boosts, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. So very similar ones at dusk, one when I leave the Expedition Zone, but what it does tell you is that they occur twice at a bare minimum. When it's anchored, though, it occurs an extra time with the at dusk trigger. The Spindle Harvester, the third one they have, has the quick ability of you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. Sorry, the second one had the next card you play this afternoon costs 1 less. I don't think you'll ever be using these uniques for their ability. You'd be more than likely looking to just anchor them and get that benefit. So it's 1/2 for 1/0/1, and when played from reserve, I gain Anchored. And at dusk, if I have one or more boosts, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. These cards are not going to be as valuable now that you're going to have to spend more than one in terms of your cost for any of your spells if you do not want them. If you want to recur them from your reserve, as we know, Arfanis' new ability going forward, starting off in 2 weeks, is if you play a spell that costs 1, that spell has fleeting. All right, the second of the 2 Arfanis players was DSL Walitze, and you can see here the main difference between both builds is the Nylum Withered Tree, finding ways to interrupt your opponent through exhausting their cards. Rhymefrost 3, whereas what we saw in Pedrinho's build, it was just a single Rhymefrost. Instead, opting to have the conscriptions, whereas the Walitze deck does not. So very interesting, another Evanescence, so 2 Evanescences, but very similar in terms of its build. This does use Muna Caregivers while you're still having Spindle Harvesters. They are the rare ones, not the unique ones, but we do have 2 Muna Caregivers and a Sneezer Shroom as the uniques in here. But outside of that, it is very similar, even in terms of its characters. What you're replacing is with your Sneezer Shrooms instead of having Pasiphae in terms of the build that they've got there. Now, let's have a look at DSL Walitze's uniques. So the first one is a Muna Caregiver, 1/1 for 1/0/0, and when I leave the expedition zone, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. So no matter what they do to it, they'll get that, because whether it comes back to your hand, whether it goes and gets discarded, you'll still get that benefit. And it has an ability from that says if up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. So you're seeing a little bit more. They're using the anchor here not only on the Spindle Harvesters, but Muna Caregivers give you that if that's what you so choose to do. I think this is something that they may want to do. The other one is a Muna Caregiver 2/1 for 1/0/1. When played from hand, resupply. And when I leave the expedition zone, you may return a card other than me from your reserve to your hand. And it has the same quick ability up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. The third one is a Sneezer Shroom. So 1/2 for 1/0/1 in stats, and it has from anywhere. You may return a spell from your reserve to your hand, so the difference here is it happens straight away upon being played, rather than waiting until you leave the expedition zone. And then it also has, when played from reserve, I gain anchored. No quick ability for this Sneezer Shroom, a very pretty looking card, by the way. Well, that is it. Those were the 2 undefeated players in the AWOL tournament on Monday. When we get to the Wednesday tournament, I'll quickly go past it because they were on that hiatus. But let's look at Ligue Latam, also a Monday tournament. Sorry, that is a Monday one, not a Tuesday. I apologize. Ligue Latam. So this is more done towards the US market, or the Americas market. And their tournament had 49 players, so just a slight reduction on last week. And they had 1 player using Fen and Crowbar. Congratulations. Like, I got to give a hand there, because Fen and Crowbar does not get the love it should. I think it's such a fantastic hero. Much tougher than for me and my brain to be able to compute properly, but it is really good. Late game, though, is hard if you don't have the ability of recursion or draw, given one of your cards is always going to go into reserve. So AFTU Aklo won with Fen and Crowbar, the pilot of that deck, and very interesting. So we can have a look here. Basically a reversal of what you would see in an Arfanis build. 2/3 characters, 1/3 spell, no landmarks whatsoever, so they are not going through trying to get the festival going off. And we're seeing so much more people move off festival, apart from a few niche decks, which I think are very strong, because people are no longer expecting it. It's almost like some of those decks that you see where Gulrang is playing, and they're not playing any landmarks. Now, I don't know why you do that, but maybe that is someone's technique. So people will keep cards in hand, hoping that they're going to have boosts that they can get rid of, and they're only getting rid of a token because that's the only boosted card, potentially. So something to think about, but good build. I really love playing against Fen and Crowbar, even though I struggle immensely no matter who I use as a hero. And what you're seeing here, the Sleight of Hand, the Acapella Training, the Twinkle Twinkle, the Requiem in 2 of Sleight of Hands only 2, finding ways to bring back your characters from reserve to hand as much as possible. I would also say you're trying to bring back Acapella Training. That is a disgusting card to play against, especially if they play it on turn 1, play it twice. And your 2 cards that you may have brought out automatically are fleeting, and your card advantage is gone. Now, I do want to see what they've got in terms of their uniques. Interesting that the Little Mouse is starting to get much more play. So Aloe Vera for anchoring, the Little Mouse for being able to sabotage as well in what they have. And let's have a look. So the first one is a 1/0/1 for 1/1 Paper Herald. And when played from anywhere, you may have target character other than me lose fleeting. So once again, we're seeing a little bit more of that interaction to make your cards only be used once rather than their 2 times. And it also has a quick ability of create an Orders Recruit 1/1/1 soldier token in target expedition. The second of their uniques is a Bravos Pathfinder for 2/3, and its stats are 1/2/2. Every time I look at this character, I just think of New Zealand because I look at the stone that they have on their necklace. So I am seasoned, so really great on that front. And when I leave the expedition zone, you may return a spell from reserve to your hand. Now I'm going to have a look to see they've got a card that says seasoned, but I don't really see much that would actually give them the benefit of a boost in the way that they're building. So really wanting to use it more for that spell recursion, and it does have that quick ability of up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less, other than me, gains anchored. The third of their uniques is a Flamel, so we're moving up in cost from a 1/1 to a 2/3 to a 3/4 Flamel, 4/4/3, and you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand when played from anywhere. And also, when you are playing it from reserve, roll a die. On a 4+1, I gain a boost for each card in your reserve, so really trying to get that Anansi style of play coming off for this Flamel. I still think this is more on the expensive side if you end up playing it from reserve. I don't know if that's the way that traditionally Fen and Crowbar does use this, but at the same time, they won a tournament. They were able to become undefeated and get the glory. So the next tournament, unfortunately, as I was saying before, the AQZ Blitz Week 7, there was no tournament information available. I'll make that available next week as the last hurrah for that tournament until we find out what is happening next. But we did have another tournament on Tuesday, which is the A Single Elimination Season 4, Week 8, as hosted by Altered Corner / Kohlrabi. 34 players, so they grew by 2 on the week prior. And Trickster, after having a nice little vacation away from the game during set 2, we're seeing him return back to his old ways using Sigismar and Wingspan. I know that is not his favorite deck. His favorite of all time was Waru pre-nerf. But we have got him winning that. And while I'll make a small call out here, AQZ Runefolk with Waru coming in second, probably the only player that tends to use Waru with any level of success these days. But let's have a look at Trickster's deck. Now, he is preparing for Dallas, which is occurring in our lifetime in 2 days' time. I'm actually meeting up with him. We're staying together in Dallas, so it's going to be interesting. 2 people from 2 different teams getting a chance to hang and try not to spy on each other's decks in case we do get to play against each other. I have said quite publicly, though, that I won't be playing all the tournament as I'm part of the casting team, but I will play as much as I can before I get kicked out to join the retirement booth, as I like to call it sometimes. All right, so DB Trickster, what did you have in your deck? So what we're looking at is very, very similar to my kind of deck, although it has got Foundry Mechanic, even though there are no permanents to actually reduce that cost in the rare, but it is a very good statted card. Orders Trooper, Orders Crier, Jack Frost, Monolith Legate, so very much interacting with your opponent, especially if you're not able to progress. Frog Prince, still only a 1-of, and an Orders Accountant 1-of, Foundry Mechanic 1-of. Very interesting. I try not to do that myself, and he's also got a single Gift of Self, looking for if he does need that card draw, that is something he can do. License Withdrawal, very much a staple in every deck. Now, not only Sigismar, it almost feels like every deck that is in the Orders faction. But let's have a look at the 3 uniques they played. So they've got 2 Ozmas and 1 Monolith Runescribe. The first Ozma, 3/2 for 2/2/1 in stats, and when played from anywhere, if you control a token, which you will, because no one wants to remove a token on as the first action of a day, draw a card. Very, very strong. So this is the card recursion, the card advantage that you do need when you're playing Sigismar, because most of your cards are so low to the ground. At endgame scenario, you need to have more cards to be able to play. Also, from reserve, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card, so this allows you to potentially draw 3 cards over its turn. And when it's played from reserve, because it's only 2/2/1 for 2, you're just paying the extra, and almost the same thing as playing it from hand, but you get that extra card draw. The second Ozma they've got is a 3/3 that Trickster has, 3/3 for 1/2/2, and it has 2 from anywhere abilities. The first one being, if you control 3 or more characters, draw a card. So almost your traditional old rare before the errata. The second one being, create an Orders Recruit 1/1/1 soldier token in your companion expedition. So this, when it gets played in Sigismar, it automatically meets the condition. You've got Ozma, you've got your recruit from starting the day at noon recruit, and you've got this other recruit, and you meet the condition to be able to draw that card. And if you're in a bit of a jam, then you can also use its quick ability to create an order to recruit 1/1 token soldier in your companion expedition. Unless you're trying to do something very unique and interesting, why would you not ever pay the additional 2 to get the benefits that this card can give you? The third one that he has is a Monolith Rune Scribe 3/3 for 2/2/3 in stats, and he has a From Anywhere. If you control a token, draw a card. Very much the focus and theme of this deck, draw a card. And also when played from hand, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do, I gain a boost. I don't think that's something that they'll be looking to do, but it's an option for you, especially late game if you have something that may help you to get the benefit. But I don't know what you would unless you just care about using a spell that has fleeting, because he has no permanents he can play from reserve. But very well done. Congratulations and welcome back, my good friend. Looking forward to seeing you and playing against you in Dallas if I can, seeing how my metal lines up against yours. Then what we do have is the AQC NUC, so the Nook series, Season 2, Week 8 on Wednesday, 57 players. So we had an increase on the week before of 4. And one thing to note here is Trayson Rossum was the winner. Of course, there are no uniques being played here. Aurak and Kibble coming in second, which I think is very interesting, and also having a Tasia into the top that only had the one single loss. Very good. Kojo and Budo, which has been the staple of this format, getting 2 out of the top 7 teams, the only ones to have only lost 1 or less games. So let's have a look at TFZ's Trayson Rossum build, Axiom Salvager, Foundry Mechanic, Sap Sniffer. Looking at Grem's, one rare and 2 common ones, very interesting. Vike, of course, that is now part of the staples to stop anyone abusing you by having to play out the cards that will exhaust you in reserve. Using the double armored jammer, really great. The Refinery, interesting, very cool. 3 refineries and using the Ouroboros, very much an old style of play with the Ouroboros to try to get through their deck as quickly as possible. Got 1 Callum Burst, 2 Avalanches, and a Frozen Delivery. Amelia Earhart, the Inari and the Ghibli, but are also part of that. Inari is also interesting. I don't get to see that as often as I used to hope. I don't see it very often. I also don't play Axiom because I'm not as strong at it as other factions. But well done to TFZ for going undefeated in this tournament, 6-0 on Wednesday for the European market. I should have looked. I would love to look at the Aurak and Kibble. I will do that on the side after this as well. There was no tournament for AWOL on Wednesday. As we said, most of the admins for AWOL were away at a convention. And people are going to laugh at me because I cannot remember the name of it. And once again, the other thing we don't have is AQZ Championship Week 8. The results, the information is not yet available in 39 cards. I have asked for it as of about 3 or 4 days ago, still waiting on it. So what I'll do next week is I will bring that information in and we'll have an extended report. I will also be reaching out to the Spaghetti team, our Italian friends, to see if they will give me permission to talk about their tournaments and get all their information up here as well, as they do some fun tournaments. Not only do they do a 400 plus ELO tournament, they also do a team tournament that is going to have their final next week as well. But in so doing, I am excited for this weekend and what we'll do to see how the Americas, with their first championship for the first qualifier, how we do and how we can measure up against the European tournaments in terms of competitiveness and also in terms of fun. I'm looking forward to meeting the community. I'm looking forward to getting some pictures, getting a chance to just chat, and, as we say in Australia, have a yarn. Have a good old chat. And on that, until next week, hasta luego.